Hello, everyone. I am Patricia Butler. I am the co-founder of ArtistWorks, and we are an online music instruction company. We work with 38 world-renowned musicians, and they teach online using what's unique to ArtistWorks, and that is video exchange learning. But we're kind of putting some of that aside today, and we've decided to talk about a subject that is important to players of all skill levels, and that is overcoming musical obstacles. Those can be physical, but they can also be kind of psychological. And it doesn't matter where you are in your musical journey. Everybody faces a challenge. Sometimes when they sometimes when they encounter these challenges, they have a little difficulty getting over them. So I have done a podcast interview with Mike Marshall about this very subject, and we went into some detail that I thought was worthy of a deeper conversation. And so he brought his friend, Tony Trischka. So today, we've got both of these master musicians, Mike Marshall and Tony Trischka, who teach online at ArtistWorks. And we're going to be talking about overcoming musical obstacles. And so if you have questions, please, we want to hear from you because we want to be helpful today. And of course, we're going to be playing a lot of music as well. So to that end, we're going to start off with Mike Marshall. And he's going to play for us right here at the top of the show. So here comes Mike Marshall.
Hello there, Patricia. So good to see you, and hi to everyone who's out here listening. I'll do a little tune, a little fiddle tune here. St. Anne's reel. And one everybody knows in the bluegrass.
That was great. I really enjoyed that. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
And welcome, Tony Trischka.
Hi, Patricia. Hi, Mike. Hello to everyone out there. I'm at the Rocky Grass Festival in Lyons, Colorado right now.
What's going on?
Nice.
I didn't get a chance to put on a nice shirt. I've got my banjo shirt on right now, and just glad to be here talking to you all.
Yeah. How's Rocky Grass this year?
It's wonderful. They have something called the Academy that goes Monday through Thursday just before the festival, which starts in 2 days. And just wonderful students, wonderful staff, and teachers. So we're just having a great time. And it's
right.
It's hot.
Hot, just like you, Tony. Good to see you. Man, you look fabulous.
I appreciate that. The same right back at you. After
the sporting beard is working, man. That is very, very fine. I've never had the courage, but that was your COVID project, I take
What,
it.
this thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, Bela Fleck and I were in a contest with each other, and we didn't even know it.
Whose is longer?
Right now, mine is. I just saw him yesterday. He's out here also. He's
way to go.
The album here on the weekend.
Cool.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Didn't Bela use one of those Flobies to cut his hair during COVID or something like that?
He did.
Flovey? What the heck is that?
I don't. What is a Flobie?
It's something you put above your hair, something like this, and it just gives you like a Prince Valiant, and maybe not a Prince Valiant, but it cuts your hair automatically, something like that. I've never tried it.
Like
Ooh,
little Lord Fauntleroy or something.
I have a very fine hair cutter. Her name's Katerina Lichtenberg.
And she's multi-talented, huh? Isn't she?
And player as well, I might
She
add.
coiffs me quite well, yes.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Well, we've got a very interesting subject today, overcoming musical obstacles. And we don't want to get too academic, but, you know, people come to ArtistWorks to learn. And some of them are just starting out, but others, they've kind of hit a plateau, or they're broken. They've learned a bad habit or something like that. So you guys have been with us for over 10 years now. We just celebrated 10 years of teaching bluegrass at Artist Works. So you guys are kind of the experts. So I thought I'd turn to you and see if we might start off the conversation by talking about the kind of obstacles or challenges that you've seen your students struggle with. Mike, do you want to go first?
I guess I will. We talked about this a little bit a few months ago, but it's nice to visit it here with Tony. I'm sure bouncing off each other, we'll have some interesting thoughts about this. My guess is that all of us experience this. I think that's probably the most important thing for amateur musicians or people who are just beginning to understand. Is that even the best players, your heroes, go through these issues too. So that's one of the things I'd like to talk about, and we could expand on any of these subjects as you wish, Tony, if you want to add anything to that. But I'm sure you've hit your walls just like I've hit mine.
Oh, absolutely. Can I cut in for a second?
Please give me your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I've been very busy through the entire COVID situation. With Artist Works, of course, every day, which was wonderful, responding to people's video exchanges and whatnot. And I was playing every day, but not like intensely. And the first 3 gigs I did after, once I started playing again, I was not happy with my playing.
I've yet to do those 3 gigs.
Yeah, well, yeah.
And I'm a little afraid.
Oh, it's going to be great. But my own feeling, and I talked to people, I said, I just didn't play as well. I was really disappointed in my playing. And then I played a 4th gig with these 2 hot players, and I just felt, oh, okay, yeah, I can play the banjo still. But, when you're off the scene for that long, but somehow it took the 4th gig for me to kind of get my ceiling.
Sure, I mean,
I was slightly beating myself up about it.
Right,
and I don't do that. That's just, you should not do that. And honest to goodness, I just said to myself, I can do this. I can do this. I had to psych myself up for it.
Well, there's a mental side to all of this,
Right.
There's no question about it. We get in those.
I feel like I've gotten over the hump of that. And there's a famous quotation, I can't remember who said it, but if you think you can, or if you think you can't, you're right.
Ooh.
And so I started, I can do this. I can sound good on this gig.
So it's a confidence question.
It can be, because again, off the scene for a year and a half or whatever, and you finally get out there, it's like, wow. So anyway, I've said enough.
I've been watching a lot of basketball. Here we are. Tonight is the big game 6 of the NBA Finals. Yeah. Suns and the Bucks, Milwaukee. And that is so much a part of the conversation when you hear these players interviewed after the game. They'll say like, well, you were missing for the first 2 quarters. And then around the 3rd quarter, you sort of hit a zone and you couldn't miss. All of a sudden you hit 4 in a row.
Yeah.
And the players inevitably all say the same thing. They say, no matter if the shots are not falling, I go at it still, as if I can. and you just wait for it to come back around.
Right.
Is their take on it, which is very interesting.
Yeah. And even when I didn't feel like I was doing that well, I was still trying. I wasn't like giving up. You got to keep trying. And as same thing, it came around. And as we talked about before, how often do they make those shots?
Well, that's the other thing that is shocking to me. I've been watching a lot of these because I'm in Europe half the year. I watch a lot of the highlights. They condense the whole game into 9 minutes or 10 minutes, and they only show you the shots that went in. Right. And so when you watch those, you think, oh my God, these guys are geniuses. They're miracles of nature. But to shoot 50% is gigantic in that game.
Yeah.
I mean, they're missing half their shots or more. Most of them are missing more. And so that's also important to remember. And us who make recordings, we know the process that goes into that of learning a tune, recording it many times, picking the best take, editing things together, fixing solos. The listener who amateur musician doesn't understand the process of making those recordings can think the same way I have about basketball.
Yeah, or you take the Beatles' Let It Be movie I saw when it first came out. There's a new one with Peter, whatever his name is, who did all the Hobbit movies, whatever. Peter Jackson.
Okay.
But the Beatles' Let It Be, it was sort of about their breakup, and they went into the studio. And it didn't sound that good because they were just learning the songs. They weren't playing out. And so even the Beatles did not sound that
Sure.
The harmony vocals were not quite there.
Missing a chord here and there.
That's the Beatles. So
yeah.
Everybody makes mistakes.
Well, I think that's what you're really saying is, without maybe actually saying it, that these basketball players only hit half of the shots, or the baseball players have what a 30% hit average is really good. And there's no such average for musicians, but I think what you're saying is don't have the expectation of batting 1,000 here, because every time you play, you're not going to play perfectly. And so to be afraid that you're going to make a mistake, doesn't that cripple some people?
Well, of course,
fear?
that fear is, I'm sure we've all felt it, Tony, the first time you played with somebody who you considered to be a hero. Oh, yeah. Tell us about that experience.
I'm not sure. Are you thinking of someone specifically? Or?
Yeah, like Earl Scruggs.
Well, okay. So, yeah, I got into the studio to do this double banjo Bluegrass Spectacular album, and Earl Scruggs agreed to be on it, which was pretty amazing. And I got to sit knee to knee with him, not touching, but knee to knee with a huge difference. And I'm sitting knee to knee with Earl Scruggs, who I wouldn't exist without.
So the top of your head is coming off.
It's totally coming off. And we're working on harmony. I'm working on the harmony part for Farewell Blues. And on one level, Earl's kind of a laid back guy, but he was a laid back guy, but it's Earl Scruggs.
Yeah.
And man,
so that little conversation, that little man in your head.
That little man in my head was going there, but
he leaves your head, he goes on your shoulder and starts poking at you.
Yeah, and I was able to put it out of my mind, and it worked out just fine. But yeah, that little voice was saying, "This is Earl Scruggs, don't forget."
Yeah. You have to shut off those voices, and we could talk about that. What do you say to yourself? I can remember playing with Zakir Hussain, the first time, and just having this unbelievable, that same kind of feeling of like, well, this guy could actually probably kill me if he wanted to. I could die from this.
How do you quiet that voice, though? I kind of like where Tony was going, where he said, I can do this, but what's the strategy there when you've got the voice or the little guy, that's on your shoulder saying, I don't know that you're that good, or you could make a mistake and you'll be embarrassed. How do you get rid of that?
I if I may, I think the important thing is to not push it away, but to accept it, let it come through, because otherwise it's going to be festering back there. It's just like, okay, I have this thought, accept it, and then move past it. If you keep, there's something going on, I don't want to think about it. It's going to stay there. So just let it come through. Okay, now I'm going to choose not to feel that way. That's what I would suggest.
So excuse me, Mike, I'll just say this one thing, and then I want to turn the microphone over to you. So one thing that I was often taught is, what's the worst that can happen?
Yeah.
What's if you make a mistake, what is the worst thing that could possibly happen? And I remember speaking with Mike Block, and he said, you got to walk yourself through that. You make a mistake. What are you going to do? Just, what are you going to do? Or if you're on stage, are you going to walk off stage because, oh my God, you made a mistake? No. So you have to kind of game it out and know that you're going to make a mistake, and that kind of lessens the fear. But the question I was told to ask myself is, what's the worst that could happen? But Mike, I think you had something probably better to say.
No, that's a brilliant one. That's really good. Nobody ever dies from it. They think they're going to, but they actually don't. So that's important to remember. And one of the cool things about music is that it's so joyful, and the rhythm, I think, provides a kind of soothing balm to all of that. If you can put yourself in the mental space of, well, why did you take up music? Because you love music, and you love the sound of these instruments, and you love the social aspect of hanging out with people who are also into this. And if you can just constantly remind yourself of that, that's going to help. I've found that, hey, wait a second, I get to do this,
Yeah. One thing I wanted to say is that many times you might think, oh, I sounded terrible. And then you listen back, oh, that sounded pretty good. You can oftentimes, I won't say oftentimes, but sometimes you can say, well, I really didn't sound very good.
Mm-hmm.
This gig at the Birchmere in Alexandria, Virginia, and just I was in a really bad mood when I hit the stage, and no one has to know why, but I got on stage and I was really in a bad mood, and played the gig, and it was being transmitted by satellite to various places around the country. It was like this big deal.
Oh, geez.
And I was with this band. I was the leader of the band, and it was my band, and I had to do all the MC work, and I was just kind of going through the motions, but did my job and played as well as I could. And I thought afterwards, God, that sounded terrible.
Mm.
And this guy in Holland put it out as an album. He said, I want to put this out as an album. And I said, oh, I don't know. Let me hear it. And I listened back to it. And it sounded pretty good.
Wow.
So you can, there are times if you feel like you sounded really bad, maybe you sounded really good and you just don't have the perspective. It felt that
There
way.
you go.
So
It's like the music is existing on a slightly different plane from that part of your brain that's having all those negative thoughts.
exactly.
I've had that experience in the studio where, especially on an improvised solo situation, where you're trying to go for something and you don't quite make it. And then, the engineer or the producer will get on the talkback mic and say, that was perfect, sounded great, come on in and listen to it. And you're thinking, no, that wasn't it. I had this other idea. But what you did play was actually great, and it fit the song, and maybe was even better than that fancy idea you were hoping to pull off.
Right.
So I guess some of what you're saying comes down to setting expectations. And I used to tell my kids, you get what you aim for. So if you aim at nothing, then you're gonna get nothing. But you guys are talking about expectations of playing well and sort of seeing yourself play well. And maybe that would help some folks too. If you can imagine playing well and seeing yourself succeed, maybe that helps with confidence. Because what we're getting down to here is confidence, expectations, fear, of making a mistake, fear of being embarrassed. So is there some value in being able to see yourself succeed?
I'd say so for sure. I just did that with that last gig. I was saying that I'm going to do well tonight. Whether I do or not, I can do this.
Right.
The thing is, when you're a professional musician, there are more expectations because people come to see you and they expect that you're going to play well. So there is that pressure, but I generally don't fall prey to that. I just, try to, but I think confidence is a big part of it. For
Yeah.
sure. And
There's different aspects of this. There's certainly, we're talking about the mental side of this right now, and the confidence is part of it. But there is being prepared, let's face it, that if you've practiced enough and really have the stuff down under your fingers, you're going to be more relaxed about whether you can pull it off. So that's a whole nother conversation, I think, when we're talking about this. And how do you find time to prepare yourself?
Well, isn't that one of the obstacles so many people have? And again, this gets back to the mental expectations. I think a lot of people think they need to be able to practice an hour and a half, 2 hours a day, or they're not going to be any good. And if they don't practice that much, then they're not going to do well. But can you help people maybe set some more realistic expectations about their practice time and how to maybe make that the most productive it can be?
I think, there are different strategies for that. I don't know. There was a time when I would say, okay, I'm going to practice for an hour and make that happen. And I would set aside an hour to do that. And I would sometimes find myself falling asleep while I was playing because I was like, I wasn't in the mood to play. But I want to do this. I set aside an hour. And so these days, more what I do is, and I talked to Bela Fleck about this, and he said what he would do is he would have, you want to have your instrument out on a stand unless you have a frisky sheepdog or something. If you have it in your case under your bed or in a closet, you're not as likely to have it out sitting there in the view. If you have 10 minutes, and this is what Bela said, if he has 10 minutes, he'll play. If he has 2 hours, he'll play. He sees the band. And there's a story about Duke Ellington that he was about to go to bed at midnight, and he walked past his piano on the way to the bedroom, and he said a seduction occurred. And he had to sit down at the piano, and he wrote, one of his great tunes and sing till 4 a.m. writing,
There you go. I tell my students is the exact same thing, to have a space where the instrument lives and it's always out and you walk by it and see it. That's huge. Having everything there, so it's not a big production, whether it's your tape recorder or your computer or your metronome, whatever those things are that you like to have, your footstool, a good chair. So it's not a big production to get it out and plunk it for a minute. The other part is to have reasonable expectations, you know. I mean, there's hundreds and hundreds of these fiddle tunes, let's say, you know, if you're into bluegrass. And nobody's going to know them all, you know. Let's face it, Tony Trischka knows the most of anyone I know, but aside from him,
I don't think so.
it's kind of an impossible task. You know, I love Brazilian choro. I learned a whole bunch of those tunes, but when I go to Brazil, I play my 20 tunes or whatever, and then these guys go for another 6 hours playing,
Wow.
you know, tunes I'd never heard. You know, it's a deep, deep well.
Yes.
So, you know, I could beat myself up and say, oh, I should know all of those.
Yeah, and I think there's always going to be someone better than you are. So I think if you keep that in mind, but you are you, and you are where you are in your process. And I'm just learning how to play. I've been playing for about 57 years or something, and I feel I've got oceanic ways to go. So, you know, you never want.
You're always going to feel that way.
Yeah, and
hopefully.
Yeah, and there was another quote that I can't remember who said this either, but something like, "If you stop learning, you're going to get old, or you are old."
Ooh.
Yeah.
If you keep learning,
Is that what happened?
wow, thank you, Patricia.
No, I meant to me.
Oh, wait, maybe you were insulting me. Maybe I misunderstood. Never mind.
No, Tony, I love you too much. I would never.
You too, Patricia.
Oh my
That is the
God.
beauty of this music thing, is that it's such a deep ocean that it will keep you interested forever, and that's what it's always been for me. It's just been a continuous discovery, you know, of what is out there musically, as well as what kind of things do I want to do on my instrument, what kind of sounds do I want to make, what areas can I improve. It's just endless.
Well, you know, speaking of deep water, let's just stretch this metaphor a little bit. It can be daunting to a lot of people. They can end up in the deep end of the pool, and they want to do everything. They do want to learn all the fiddle tunes. They want to be as good as Tony Trischka and Mike Marshall. And it is daunting. Even if you come onto ArtistWorks, you see a lot of content. You see a lot of lessons. You see a lot of other people who are better than you, like Tony said. Some folks who aren't. So there's this obstacle of practice and how to really be productive with that time. So the subject here is obstacles. Let's specifically talk about how to handle a playing obstacle with regard to practice. What if you're really struggling with something, whether it's sweep picking or whatever? How should you handle that in practice? Mike, do you want to go first on that?
Well, I could, yeah. I mean, first off, one of the beauties of ArtistWorks is that we get to see you playing, and we can suggest things, very specific things that we see in your playing, that it's very difficult for you to see in your own playing. And that's what having a teacher is all about. I mean, some great musicians could do that, or self-taught on their own, and have learned from just watching other folks or being around other folks. But most of us have had somebody close by, you know. So my experience as a teacher on ArtistWorks has been that I try to zero in on one or two things that are very specific to that player that they could use improvement on. I mean, one of the big ones for mandolin players is to just get the upstroke to sound as strong as the downstroke. A simple idea like that, you know, just getting... Because with bluegrass, you have the groove of the tune, is the drive of the music is the downstroke of your right hand, you know. All those accented notes, diga, 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 diga. So the poor upstroke has gravity working against it, and the thumb is much bigger as a downward, you know, it's a bigger force. And the poor index finger coming up just can't compete with that as well. So a lot of times it's something very simple and specific like that. And I have a whole lot of exercises for working on just the upstroke.
So you think then if the upstroke is an obstacle for them, should there be some part of their practice that they focus just on that, or how should they manage an obstacle
certainly.
like that? So what should they do?
Sometimes just simply pointing it out is like a revelation, you know. But of course, I have various exercises I'll do where I'll say, "Well, play a musical phrase, simple idea like that, and take all the upstrokes and make them stronger, and try to feel the index finger coming up under the pick, and feel that pressure against the pick from below, because you always feel it from above with the thumb, but just bringing out that E note, you know, something so simple can all of a sudden help them see and hear. All of a sudden now they hear, oh, now it's even. Before I was playing it like this, and that E note was getting kind of ghosted. I call it a ghost note because it almost disappears. You just hear the shadow of it. As soon as you really hear it, oh, wow. And the idea is that, well, now when I play Fischer's hornpipe, I'm really able to hear all the notes. Before I was hearing the groove.
Yeah.
And bluegrass is very deceptive because as I'm doing that, it's swinging. And it actually sounds pretty good, you know? And you can jam with it and you can get with your buds and they'll go, yeah, let's play that tune. That's cool. But I think when we hear the great players, what we're hearing is all the details. You know, we're hearing every note. And we know that if we slowed down the recording, you'd really be able to hear bing, 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 bing. You know, each note.
And that's the finesse of becoming a master musician too.
Well, it's also a simple idea that somebody can apply to the most basic tune that they're playing. You know, I'm not talking about improvising some crazy stuff here. Whether it's, you know, some simple tune like that, all of a sudden to bring the upstroke into focus a little bit more can expand your whole sound. You know.
Well, thank you for that, Mike. And
Tony, I'm sure, have a lot of thoughts.
so, yeah, let's just see what Tony has to say about, you know, students that are facing some kind of challenge or obstacle. How should they practice that? What role should that obstacle have in their practice?
Well, as Mike said, well, you know, you can focus on whatever it is. And when we're doing artist works and we're just looking at people's video exchanges when they send in their videos, you get a chance to see exactly what it is. You know, what I tell people sometimes, they may send in a video and they've had a lot of trouble with it, but they had to, you know, that was the assignment, so they do it and they weren't that happy with it. And I had the same experience when I was learning to play. When I was 14 years old, my teacher was trying to show me Sally Good. And I couldn't make any sense out of this position. I couldn't hear a melody or anything, and I learned it, but I wasn't that happy with it. And then I just sort of gave up on it for 5 years and came back to it. And, this is good after all. But I think if someone's really struggling with someone, like really struggling, I'll just usually say, you can let this go. I'll say, I've had tunes that I just didn't like that much. And once asked Bela Fleck, I wrote this book about beginning banjo for beginning banjo players. And I said, what would you suggest? And he just had a simple comment. He said, play the songs you like. And so what I tell people is, if you play a song you like, then you're going to really get into it, you know. And so I've told people, you know, and some people say, so, like, because we have beginning, intermediate, and advanced areas for video exchanges. I mean, for the classes and the lessons. And I tell people, you know, someone will say, hey, is it okay if they're a beginner, can I go into the intermediate lessons and find this song there? And I said, yeah, definitely. If you like it, you know, give it a shot. And if you get too frustrated, then, you know, come back and it's not like I don't want them to stay in the beginning lessons and go through the course, but if you want to just jump out for a tune, you can go to an advanced lesson if there's something there that interests you. You know, I think you'll have more fun doing it because it's, you know, we're most people that are playing on artist works are not, who are students, are not looking to be professional musicians. A lot of them are
Right.
retired, and I used to play the banjo when I was a kid, and then family and work, and now I've retired and I have time to do this. You want to have fun, so
Yeah.
you shouldn't be torturing yourself.
Well, and instead of saying, I should be able to do this, I should learn this, I should be able to play this by now. If it's that much work, if it's that hard, then I love your advice. Move on. Move on to something else that you love and learn to play the music that you love. It doesn't mean that you don't practice. It doesn't mean that all you do is tinker on the same song you love, but move on if you're beating yourself up.
Well, I love what Victor Wooten had to say about
what's that?
The word practice. He said, I never practiced. All I did was play. I played music. He's in a family of four older brothers, and they just played all day. And so the idea, hey, this is music. It should be fun.
Yeah.
And so through the playing comes the work. And you're inspired to do it because you love the sound of the song or the sound of the instrument.
Yeah. Well, speaking of that, don't you think we ought to have some music?
Oh, wow.
And then there's questions. We have some great questions. And this
cool.
is one of those topics that I definitely want to take people's questions on because there are some specific situations. So guys, don't hesitate while they're playing to type in another question if you have one. But what would you guys like to play?
Well, we can't really play together.
You can't play together. No, you can't do that.
But Tony, I'd love to hear you play something, man.
All right.
I'm going to play a little bit of a Little Rabbit, fiddle tune called Little Rabbit. It's one of my favorite tunes. It's a fiddle tune.
Woohoo! Nice ending.
Nice.
Whatever that was.
No.
I'd love to. Can I play it now?
Yeah, sure.
I'll play it in A. How about that?
That's where it's supposed to be.
rabbit went down the hill real quick.
That little rabbit went down the hill. Bravo, bravo. That was
Got away
fabulous.
from the big dog.
And I
That
should
was great.
mention right in the middle of me playing that my third string started going flat for no
No.
particular reason. And so you just gotta, okay, that's happening. Let me just kind of pause on that string, hopefully in rhythm, and
I
then
loved it.
back up and then just keep going. So right there, I had a little minor disaster, but you just keep smiling and people won't know.
Well, this is a question. This is actually a question. So perfect segue. Thank you, Tony. It's almost like we had that planned.
Yes.
But one of the questions is, how do you process your mistakes and maintain your confidence?
Well, that goes right back to the first thing we were talking about. You know, that little man on your shoulder who's whispering in your ear, "Hey, you really messed up there. What are you going to do about it?" And you have to be able to say, "Excuse me, would you go away for a minute? I'm trying to play this music. You know, let me get through this tune, and I'll talk to you about it afterwards." You know, that's where I put it. And the groove helps. You know, this kind of music really helps. I feel for classical musicians who might have, for instance, a memory slip in the middle of a big complex concerto. I think that's more fearful. I mean, one of the cool things about this style of music is that it's groove music. And so if you mess up, but you keep the groove going, you know, you at least have something that's happening. But if you're going to play a classical piece and you don't necessarily know how to improvise,
You probably don't if you're a classical
I
player.
don't know how they survive that.
Yeah, I know.
You know, I mean, what do you do in the middle of that?
Panic, which is not good. You know,
'cause there's nothing to lean on, right?
no,
Right.
there's nobody. But Tony, what? Now we've left all the classical musicians hanging out there, and I apologize, but you just need to memorize the music. That's the only
Well,
way.
I mean, I've talked to some. I mean, they'll just move the bow on one string until they can think of what to do next. You know,
Yeah,
Or they'll
well-
go back to the front of the tune and try to make it through the second time.
Yeah, exactly. But it's all, you know, it's not open heart surgery. Absolutely
Again,
nobody is going to
nobody's
die.
killed,
So
right.
it's just your arms and legs are not going to fall off. you know,
Though you thought they would.
you're going to live through it. So Tony, you said something you just keep smiling, but you want to maybe go a little bit deeper on that? Let's just say you've made a mistake. You recognize you made a mistake. There's always a physical reaction to a mistake. How do you recover from that physical reaction to a mistake? Do you have any advice there?
Well, I mean, that Little Rabbit was far from perfect. I haven't played that in a long time, and it was like, oh wait, I'm going to play Little Rabbit, but I played it so much for so long over the years. I mean, not like every day at all. And I probably haven't played it in 4 or 5 months or something. But I feel like I know it so well, and then I started playing, and like, wait, I haven't played this in 5 months.
Yeah.
And
Oops.
I was clamming. I was having a clam bake here and there.
I landed a couple myself.
Yeah. So I just, you know, I mean, part of it is just what Mike said. You just keep moving. You have the groove going, and you just until I started going flat. So I went flat, and I made some clams.
But you still kept the groove going while you were tuning.
Right. Well, that's what I was trying to do. I didn't want to let go of the groove, and so I
Right.
just kept playing. And it's also the sort of thing, if you're prepared. In other words, I played that tune many times. So even though I was not fresh on it, I thought I'd be fresher than I was. I've played it so many times, and I can sort of fake my way through it.
Yeah.
I didn't do everything the way I wanted to. And if I had the time to spend, 5 minutes just playing through a couple of times, it would have been much better just now.
Well,
But it's fine, and I got through it. And I might have played some things that were kind of cool because sometimes.
right. Well, you're never coming back, Tony. We're never having you back.
Bye, everybody. It's really been great. I'll see you guys later. I'm out of here.
I'm kidding. But what you're saying is, we're talking very openly about mistakes and nobody's chagrin. It's you made a mistake or something didn't go quite as planned, let's say. This is normal for professional musicians and for beginners. So everybody needs to just accept the fact that you're going to have a clam once in a while. You're going to get lost. It happens. And the more you practice and the more times you make mistakes and recover from those mistakes, the more confident you end up getting, right?
That's true. You do develop a thick skin about it. And I think that I'm also more attracted to those musicians who are willing to take those risks.
Right.
and push themselves out on that limb. I don't want to hear a perfect performance.
Yeah.
That's always a little flat and a little boring.
Yeah.
When you hear a performer pushing themselves, and yes, a clam happens here and there, but you can see that they're striving for something. Yeah. And those hiccups actually can create, especially in this kind of music, can create very cool syncopations. If you can't think of what the section is and you need that millisecond to kind of get your bearings, sometimes you'll play a syncopated version of the melody and make it, and you accept it as like, oh, that was screwed up, but I kind of like it.
Yeah,
sometimes I like that.
Clams are better than what you were planning on playing, so it can work out that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have a couple of questions here, and this one in particular I think is important. Let me just take myself off of here. I think I can do this. Can you see that?
Yeah, I got you.
I feel like I should do this.
Yeah, I'm with you, Katya. Can everyone see that? Motivation has disappeared for the first time in my life.
During COVID, yeah, for those of you who can't read it, she's been playing since she was 8 years old. And she's struggling with motivation.
I'm with her.
What can we do? All right.
I totally get it.
Go ahead.
Let's face it, folks. It's a really weird time. I mean, this year has been whacked. And we left Germany 2 weeks ago, and then we have the news of what's going on over there with the floods, and it's very close to where we live. Luckily, everything's okay. I mean, you have to kind of embrace that, and it's okay. That's where I would go. If you just don't feel it for a bit, and then just see the music as music is a healer, and it's going to be what will get us through this. But if you need to take a break from life is grand, that's okay. I mean, I spent most of this year working on the first Bach cello suite on the mandocello. And that took me to a place that helped me get through it. It's very difficult music, and it's really taxing on the memory, but it's something I always wanted to try to get to the point where I could learn it, and I did. But I haven't been, to any festivals. No festivals have been happening anyway, so it's not about that joy de vivre.
But you did try something new, and maybe that kind of gets the creative juices going a little bit. And maybe don't be so hard on yourself. Just play a little bit,
Yeah, and I think
Tony, you had an idea about getting the creative juices going. Maybe that would help our friend here with her motivation.
Yeah, I agree with Mike. It's okay to put it down. And I had one of my students in a VE say, "Look, I just haven't played in a year. I think a year." And then they came back and they got their mojo back. And I understand. I mean, for me, during the pandemic, I had Artist Works, and I'm not just plugging Artist Works, although I guess I am, doing the VEs, because I always try to come up with variations for every VE I do, whatever tune they send, and I come up with a variation. That keeps me motivated and just working. So I had that all year, all through the whole pandemic.
Oh, yeah. I have to say that was my salvation.
Really
having these students working on music and me having to learn something new.
Yeah, and then I also...
And just having that connection with other musicians, the way the site is set up, you really feel like you're part of a community.
Yeah, and I think everyone felt that way, because we all kind of came together. Let's see, I was going to say something else.
It was about getting the creative juices going, and maybe doing something new.
I mean, this is not something, not everyone's going to go out and buy a new instrument, but I bought this just before the pandemic. I bought Balafleck has a instrument it's a banjo called the Missing Link, the M Missing Link, and it's a low tuned banjo. Instead of being up in G, it's down in C. And I wrote 7 songs on it. I think I just fell in love with it, and that got me motivated. But interestingly, literally about 20 minutes before I started doing this, or half an hour, I had just done a workshop on what do you do? How do you get off your plateau? And one thing I started with is pre-improvise. In other words, don't worry about playing a tune or a fiddle tune. Just put your hand somewhere on the fingerboard, hopefully somewhere that you haven't been before. Like maybe just make up some position. Okay, I just went to this weird position. You may not like that sound. Move the pinky up 1 fret. move things around till you find something you like. I'm just free improvising that. I had no plan. I just was noodling around. I didn't like the first thing I found, but anyone can do that. You know, a 2-year-old can do that. Just start banging on an instrument. But anyone, and try to do things you're not used to doing. One other thing that Bill Monroe did, he said, "I can write a song in 30 seconds to a minute. I can write a song in a minute." So I took that to heart and started writing tunes in 30 seconds to a minute. Like, let's see.
Yeah.
Okay,
You just wrote that.
I just invented it with my own brain. And
That's amazing. That's amazing.
so you just, you know, if you've been
Beautiful.
playing long enough, but I just did this with 5 people who were not professional musicians and some of whom were beginners. And they wrote a song in 30 seconds to a minute.
You are kidding me. Fantastic.
So anyone out there, any of you can do this.
You're right, Tony.
And you don't go, you start playing and you don't go, oh, that doesn't sound good. Oh, that's not how Bill Monroe.
You accept everything.
You accept everything and don't stop. Just keep going and record yourself doing it, because you might come up with something amazing.
Right.
Oh, I don't remember what I played, but if you record it,
Right.
then you've got it. So
I've
That's
been
a
doing
great
exactly
idea.
that. I've
So
been
look
putting
at the
lots
things-
of little bits down
yeah,
through
or
this time.
just really quickly, another thing that I'll do is if I find if there's a fiddle break in other words, rather than only in my case working on a banjo solo or someone else's banjo solo, I really like the fiddle break on the original Clinch Mountain backstep, so I work that up, and that gets you to think in all different sort of ways.
Something from another instrument.
Play from a mandolin or a fiddle, whatever, and find those
Right.
on the banjo, or play a tune that you know in one key, play it in a different key. If you play it in G, play it in C or F or D.
Right on.
These are all little strategies that can kind of freshen you up and help get off your plateau.
I have a confession to make.
Well,
Okay.
I bought a banjo during COVID.
What do you mean a confession? That's a beautiful thing.
Open back from like 18, no.
Oh
Maybe it's
my
from the
goodness.
20s. It's a sweetie. I had it shipped over to Germany. So I've been playing banjo, fingers without the picks. Just
Nice.
you know, I have a nylon string one here that's pretty cool.
Oh, those are great. I love those.
very cool.
So just to get on another instrument,
Yeah.
you know, just to
I'll
break
bet
it
that
up.
changes everything, though. I mean, you really feel a completely different perspective
Completely.
about the music. Yeah, that's really a very interesting thing.
That's really good.
Cool.
Are there other questions? I love
Yeah,
this.
there are questions, and I do want to make sure that we have a couple in here. Julie, who seems to be playing and performing a little bit, would like to know, how do you keep your focus when so many things might be happening around you?
Oh, how do you stay inside your own game? Getting back to the basketball metaphor, I love these guys when they start talking about when other players on the court. I mean, imagine if you're trying to play music and you've got the other band members trash talking you while you're playing. So as bad as it is, we don't have it as bad as they do, because they're really hard on each other and they're nasty. So it's, you know, this is a super supportive world, especially the world of folk music and bluegrass and Americana, and so just to stay inside your own head, yeah, you have to. That is the game, is to just stay focused on what you're doing, but at the same time having the other part of your brain listening to the other musicians continuously. I talk to my students about having this sort of split brain thing going on, where they have to stay in rhythm, you know, with the rhythm tracks we provide or what have you, but also focused here. Yeah, I don't know.
Well,
it's a tricky one, depending on how difficult the music is.
I think there's that too. But one of the things that might be helpful to Julie, who I think asked the question, is play a lot where there is a lot of distractions. Just train yourself.
That's an idea.
Don't you got the more you do it, the better you're going to get.
Yeah.
So
there's a guy on my site, calls himself Top Hat. Hi, Julie. Good to see you. Glad you're here. And he plays, I don't know if he's still doing it right now, but he would play. He has a dog that he always travels with, and he gets in the back of his pickup truck and sets up there or just plays. And he'll play at like fairs or farmers markets and that sort of thing.
yeah.
And I put out his banjo case and collect a few bucks.
Yeah.
He plays in these situations where in some cases people aren't listening. They're walking by, they're talking to each other, and there are a lot of distractions. And I think that's a really good thing. I've played back in the early 80s. I played on the street in New York City on 6th Avenue, and we're playing. We gathered a crowd, and someone above us in their apartment above us was angry and poured fetid water down the crowd and not us. And we kept playing. So go through those distractions. But no, seriously, like playing or get in a restaurant if someone is willing to hire you in a restaurant or just say, hey, I just want to play as background music. And so there's no pressure because people aren't particularly listening. Yeah. They might. And just out on the street in the farmer's market or whatever.
My wife, Katerina, she would always practice in the kitchen, tiny kitchen they had in Germany in their house. And with all that craziness going around, that's where she practiced.
Yeah.
Until to this day, she prefers to be right in the middle of everything.
You have
no
choice.
Working on some very hard tune.
Yeah, you have to focus. I mean,
right.
It's like teaching the kids to drive it. You know, parents always want to turn the radio off and take them just in the parking lot. And I turned the radio up and I would be like poking at the kids.
Oh,
saying,
God.
But it's because you know darn well when they get in the car with their friends, that's exactly what's going to happen. So if you're afraid of distractions or you get distracted by people making noises and such, then you need to be there more often. One thing I did just want to add as we're coming, toward the end of our little time here together is Doc Savino is one of our active students, and he brings up a very important point, and that is the value in being a member at ArtistWorks. Not that I mean for this to be a commercial, but it is incredible how supportive especially bluegrass students are of each other. And they get on the shout box, which is like a Twitter-like feed, but it's internal. And if somebody's having trouble with something or they have a question, the entire community will come in and make suggestions and just chat about it. And so I just wanted to bring that up. And Doc, thank you for the nudge on that, because we really pride ourselves on the musicians that we've chosen to teach and their lessons and the video exchange at ArtistWorks, but the community is incredibly valuable and supportive as well. So thank you for that nudge.
Yeah, thank you, Doc. It's really true, because at various times people have had some fairly serious issues in their lives, and they are willing to share that with the community.
Yeah.
And it's maybe not, they're not friends of theirs, it's not their neighbors, maybe it's something they don't want to have, everyone around them know about, but I mean, nothing highly personal, but people go through problems and they'll share them on the site.
Yeah.
And everyone jumps in and says, "Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that," or "I have some advice for you. You're having trouble with tendonitis. Try this." All these things. It's really an incredibly supportive community.
Absolutely, it really is, and I'm happy that everybody has created that community, and it's not like ArtistWorks pushing people to do it. But I mean, I don't want any of these to sound like a big commercial for ArtistWorks, but I do appreciate the fact that so many students do attend these live events, and thank you for learning with us and with these great master musicians. There's one more question I'd like to try to get answered. And maybe we've touched on it a little bit, and then maybe we could end with some music. I will remind everybody that what started this whole live event is a podcast that Mike and I did, and that will be public tomorrow. You can just, watch any resource where you get your podcast from, and it'll show up tomorrow in the ArtistWorks Music Series podcast, or you can just go to artistworks.com/podcasts, and you'll see Overcoming Musical Obstacles with Mike Marshall and with me as well. So the question is, when you make a mistake, how do you keep your groove going? Is there just something that you focus on, or is there something that you physically or mentally do when you make a mistake? How do you keep the groove going?
You smile. That helps. It makes it go away. And you do have the groove. The groove is your friend, you know. If I'm playing along, you know, if I could just, you know, try and use an example, and I'll try to mess up, or I won't try to mess up. It will just happen. Trust me. You know, I didn't really nail those notes. I kind of fluff them a little bit, you know, but there's really no time to worry about it. You've got to kind of get on with your business. Okay, another mistake. What was I trying to do? So in that situation, you just have to move forward. I mean, again, this is the beauty of playing music that has a groove to it, is that you really have no choice. I mean, you're in the moment, and you just have to stay in the moment, right, Tony? Where are we at?
And I also think, as John Hartford once said, timing is everything. And if there's anything there are two things that I stress with my students, one of which applies to everybody, which is timing. You got to work on your timing.
Absolutely.
And I still work every day with a metronome to this day, after 50 some odd years. Bela Fleck always works with a metronome. So
yes.
No matter how many years, that's a long time, and we still do it. It's not like, oh yeah, I kind of got my timing together. You never give up. You work on a new tune, there may be new challenges. That's the thing. If you're working on your time and you get used to the groove of time, then when you do make a mistake, you're sort of used to playing in time, and it'll just carry you through almost automatically if you're used to that. So there's the mental thing. Okay, don't stop. Oh, I screwed up and do that. You got to keep moving, but you can move in time if you're used to having good time. It'll just carry you through. So that's the most important thing I would say. And when your timing comes together, you just feel so much better about your own playing. And I had this student last week send in a video exchange, and his timing was a little rough, fairly rough, and he was not playing cleanly. And I pointed that out to him, and a few days later, he sent in another video exchange, a little bit slower, and his timing was immaculate. He was playing with a metronome. It sounded great.
There you go.
And he just cleaned everything up, like, instantly. And can I say one more quick thing?
Of course.
This is something that my son pointed out to me about timing. Like, working with a metronome is great. My son's a great drummer, and I say that effectively, okay, but he actually is a great drummer. And I said, son, how do you work on your time? He said, did you work with a metronome? So I never worked with a metronome. He plays along with funk music like Earth, Wind, and Fire or some Aretha Franklin.
So he is working with a metronome. He just doesn't know it.
At that point, yes. And I'm driving along, and he said, Dad, try this. He said, I'm driving. My hands are on the steering wheel, and he says, touch the fourth string and just play very evenly on the fourth string, along with funk music. Have the earbuds in.
Wow.
And then do that for a whole tune, and then play. And I said, okay. And then I saw him the next day, and I said, and he sounded very authoritative about it. And I said, man, it really worked. I felt a deeper groove than I get with a metronome. And he said, really? You told me to do that, and it worked. But since then, I've expanded. I just do like simple rolls, like forward rolls.
Along with recordings.
And you just touch the strings, so you're not hearing notes. You don't have to worry about notes or the key or anything. You're just
that's brilliant.
Alternating thumb licks, or forward, backward rolls, and I vary them.
See if you can sink right in with it.
So deep with these people, and so it's another way to go. So
we're in this time period where we have all these recordings available to us. Play along with them. That was how I learned.
Yeah.
I mean, I learned from trying to get as deep into those recordings as I could. And if it's too complex for you with the left hand making all the changes, then you're right. Just chop backbeats, along with Sam Bush.
Yeah, exactly.
And Tony Rice, and one of those bluegrass album bands, and that'll lock your time up.
Well, what I think is interesting about what you're both saying here is that you have built and recommend everyone else build a firm infrastructure that you can rely on. So it's kind of an indestructible infrastructure. And so if you do
Timing, you mean?
timing, yeah.
Yeah.
So if you
Yeah.
do flub up, if you make a clam or whatever you want to call it, you know that you can get
Still
back on.
there.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and I have to say it's the first time I've heard it.
Wow, interesting. Oh,
That you should rely on it so much to get yourself out of a mistake.
yeah, that grid of 16th notes that's happening in the back of all the music we play, whether it's classical or jazz or funk or bluegrass, you've got that happening back there. And if you're trying to play something very syncopated across it, you've got to know where the foundation is, like you said.
Great advice. You guys are so smart. You know, you should teach.
Oh, wow.
I've never had a desire to do that. I appreciate the suggestion, though.
You should start a music school, Patricia.
Whatever. Yeah, we should. Somebody ought to do that.
Yeah.
Well, I would love to hear you guys play again and round out our hour here.
Sure.
Tell me, what would you like?
I'll play something sweet.
And then, okay. Beautiful. Tony,
I already played that tune, but that's a new take on
another way to look at it. That's another thing you can do. Take something you know already and play it really slowly and beautifully.
There you go.
No, I'm not going to do that.
You can reharmonize it.
Go ahead, Tony. Play something for us.
Yeah, I will. This is a classic style banjo thing, and for you can play different things, just like Mike played choros, this beautiful Brazilian music. You can, if you're tired of bluegrass or you want something really fresh. Not that you can never really get tired of bluegrass, but try some different style. And on the banjo, there's something called the classic style of banjo, which was parlor music from the last turn of the century, the late 1800s into the 1900s. And this is a tune from that, actually from 1870, in a banjo instruction book from then called Spanish Fandango. And I'll just play a little bit of it. And it's also sweet, almost like a lullaby.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Thank you.
So tell me, Tony, was the banjo tuned that same way, the open G chord, during that period?
The banjo was tuned to a D chord with a fourth string tuned down to fourth in 1855. And then it was tuned to an E chord with a fourth string tuned down to the fourth A up until the turn of the century. That tune was actually in the key of A, in the key of E, I'm sorry, in the key of E. But
so was it tuned like your low D, then A, or D to F sharp?
An open D with a fourth string down to G originally. Then it was in E, moved up to E with a fourth string down to A. But in this case, it was an open E chord.
Wow.
And then it wasn't until about 1900 that people started playing in G.
Interesting.
So, but one thing I want to just point out, just to give a fresh flavor to what you're doing, a lot of my students are always back here, close to the bridge, which is great for straight ahead bluegrass, but then they'll play something pretty like that, close to the bridge. But there's all this other space here.
There you go.
And you get much more as you get away from the bridge. And so I always recommend people try. There's not one space. Find the sweet spot that you like. For fiddle tunes.
There you go. You move forward a little bit for that.
Yeah, as opposed to which could be a little even I will say the banjo can be a little edgy sometimes. And so, you can play like over the fingerboard practically.
Yeah. It can be quite a beautiful instrument.
Yeah.
Don't forget.
Wait. That's damning with faint praise, I think, the way you just said it.
No, that's
Yeah,
there you go. Look for the sweet
area.
spot. It's the same on a mandolin, no question about it. That's the Monroe thing back by the bridge, but boy, there's some. That's actually from that same period. It's by Rafael Calache, the great mandolinist from that same period, the late 1800s into 1935.
You've been tempting us the whole time with that mandocello. We're all just sitting here looking at it.
Oh, there it is, out there in the background.
I'm just saying.
How much time do we have? Are we going?
If you're going to play it, I'll sit right here.
I'll play a little something on it.
Are you okay with that, Tony?
No, of course I am. I just wanted to point out one thing that Mike was doing, and he knows.
The big fella.
What were you saying, Tony?
I was saying that Mike was not just, I was talking about varying the distance from the bridge, but Mike was, rather than playing one whole tune here, in the midst of the tune, you can move around.
There you go.
Which is what Mike was doing. You have much more dynamic range that way while you're playing a tune.
Well, certainly playing this Bach stuff that I was working on all year, that became clear. In fact, I sent a tape to Daryl. And that was one of the comments he had was that, gee, why don't you move forward when you go to the B part or move back or what have you. He had a lot of thoughts about that, just where the right hand should be.
Beautiful.
It'll be coming out, all 6 movements, very soon.
Good.
Almost ready. I mean, it's all mixed and everything. Just got to put it up on Bandcamp. So.
Excellent. Well, we look forward to it, and this is always a great conversation. And I'm happy to be here online with you virtually, but can't wait till we all get in the studio together. I just feel like, Mike, maybe you need to get across the river, up here in early August. Yeah, that'd be good.
I'll come. I'll bring this thing. We'll film some mandocello lessons and other.
That'd be nice. Yeah, play with Tony when he comes over. Yeah,
there you go.
It'd be great. Well, I want to thank everybody, all of our students, especially, and those of you who have joined us today for this interesting and important topic of overcoming musical obstacles. And I think that Mike and Tony have given some terrific advice. Don't listen to that person on your shoulder and set some reasonable expectations.
I hope we've helped a little bit.
Yeah, you absolutely have. And I want to thank you guys for sharing all the advice that you have, and of course for teaching the world music with Artist Works.
And thank you to the people that sent in the questions too. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Patricia, for having the energy, putting all you do into this beautiful site.
You, Patricia. Boy,
happy to do it. Happy to do it, and we'll see you all online very soon. All right.
Be well.
Bye-bye.
Take care, Tony. Say hi to everyone at Rocky.
I will, and you also. Bye, Patricia. Hi to David.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Cheers.